Okay, so firstly, I must apologize for not being there in person. I hurt my back a week ago, so I thought traveling long distance is a bad idea. But fortunately, for an online version of myself presenting to you, I'm presently in Beijing. It's almost midnight, so I shall continue my talk very quickly and hopefully keep to my time. The title of my talk is Digital Heritage Within Mixed Reality Environments. I'll be talking mainly about the potentials of the metaverse technologies in the cultural heritage and creative domains. In my slides, I will not share anything very deeply, and I will just browse through. And all the things that I'm presenting are in my publications. So it'll be mainly a sharing a broad overview of how metaverse technologies have been applied in my projects, as well as my observation, experience in the field, and insights for the future. So my laboratory is the NVIDIA Joint Lab on Mixed Reality at UNNC here at Ningbo. I believe my colleague is probably sitting in the audience, Filippo. Hi. So data is central to our research. And recently, in the last 2, 3 years, we've started integrating artificial intelligence and now generative AI in our processes. And visualization is the main way in which we generate knowledge and also interpret the past. So my talk is based on a series of publications in the past, and I will continue such dialogues to our community. And this is a recent article with a little results I shall show a little later. So I will talk about the concept of metaverse before going into digital heritage, social XR in the cultural heritage domain, and generative AI for scanning, but also generating new contents. We have seen how real trends can be measured by how much time it took for a new piece of technology to reach 1 million users. For ChatGPT, it was 5 days. For Metaverse, which is a long development process of VR and AR and XR and MR, yet we have not seen that Metaverse and XR spaces have potential, that have really taken off with millions of users. However, I thought that there are real potentials with metaverse technologies and within XR spaces that are unrealized simply because we have not really know how to use them yet. My career prospect I've been developing VR and AR for 20 years. I'm also the chief editor for Presence, an MIT journal for virtual and augmented reality research that is now in its 32 years. So 60 years of VR development, where is it progressing to? In recent few years, we have seen a lot of investment by big techs, Facebook, which is now Meta, Google, Apple's Vision Pro, and so on. Now, I see this as a huge potentials, especially for cultural heritage, for art spaces, cultural spaces. But as it is, researchers are still struggling with the extra dimension. Now, to move, in our progression in the digital world, in using devices, from a typewriter to a keyboard is quite easy to transition to. But for those of us who have used the physical keyboard, the transitioning to an iPad where you're typing on this flat surface without any haptic feedback can be quite difficult. But we have adapted. And now the big techs are requiring us to jump into a VR or AR device where there are no keyboards apart from two controllers and a headset. And that is one big jump. So, but there are a lot of opportunities here. Now, what can an additional dimension give us? And we know that an additional dimension gives us the 3D space, which is a full 360 view of an object. We add a further dimension, then we get to enter into this XR space in which we can move about. Now, this additional dimension means extra information. And the information can be as rich as as rich as how we can simulate them. For example, this one HRC project in the UK, which I'm part of, Temple Bell was completely destroyed, as we know. But through tourist photos, we've managed to reconstruct a version of it because the photos have been taken over the years, 20 years, for example. But that's one way of using an XR space. Apart from that, we were also able to reconstruct and join the first long distance join of a cuneiform fragment between Frankfurt and Birmingham when I was there about 10 years ago. And also 360 videos, although they are not true VR, that additional sense of space, the presence of being there with this child gives us that experience of being with a person who has been displaced. And I've shown this to several persons. A colleague actually cried when she met face to face with a video of this person in a 360 space. We've also seen concerts where they cram 12.3 million concurrent users in a single digital space. In a physical world, we can't do that. But with this added dimension, we can do a lot more things than it is possible physically. So, but what can we actually reconstruct and represent? We know that 3D scanning, perhaps we can capture the material appearance, and perhaps with further scanning and also chemical compounds, we capture the volume and materiality of this particular object. But with with information augmentation within an XR space, we can do much more than that. And that is adding history, experiences, narratives, storytelling, interpretation that were not possible before the age of VR and far more into the future. However, to allow us to create things or simulate things in a virtual environment, we have to have the same common denominator that is shared across the physical and the digital, because we can convert the physical and transition them into the digital. Therefore, we can create this, merge this physical world into a virtual version where we can simulate stories and so on. So as we can see, this from the Beijing Palace Museum, which we transferred to the British Council Spark Festival in Hong Kong in 2019 from Beijing, right, an augmentation. But really, essentially, they are just representations. What we see is a representation, a 3D representation of numbers or vector representation, binary representation. They're just representation. But understanding the nature of the digital will allow us to use them properly. So also, I wrote this article since the reproduction of art and cultural heritage, which is a Victorian Albert Museum initiative. And, with very different versions and combinations of the physical and the digital. But the real question is this: can we transfer value from the physical to the digital? And I discussed this in my article. And of course, we know that this is Trajan's column in Rome. And the Victorian Albert Museum was very wise to make a plaster cast copy in 1873. However, the original version has eroded due to climate, weathering, and so on. And whilst the original retained its historical value, the real value of the details are within the plaster cast within the Victorian Albert Museum. And in a sense, those information are transferred from there, the physical version, to the digital. And hopefully nothing happens to the original nor the plaster cast. But if something does happen, there is a digital version now, which is there perpetually. It has electricity forever. So in this way, we see that there is a original, there's a cast copy, there's a digital copy. And through the ages, the value somehow is transferred from the physical to the digital. But as we know, digital copies can be copied, as any MP3 files or pictorial files can be copied. The digital version needs something to retain its value, the original timestamp, right, to make it immutable. The originality, the ownership must be retained within, at that moment, I thought the blockchain network could work. So we have the concept of the metaverse realized together with all technologies shown here. As the metaverse is not only the XR technology space, it is also, what will make it really useful would be the social aspect of it, the blockchain infrastructure, and the Web3 concept, and the DAO. These are the technologies in the future that will make the metaverse realize its true potential and value. So I'm going to move on to the next part, digital heritage in the XR space, making use of the nature of extended reality spaces. I was part of a consortium project, Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes, with all the members here. In this project, we scanned not only the surface of the landscape, the terrain, but also the henges, the burial mounds, and so on. On top of that, we also scanned the underground version. So we have essentially the entire data sets from the entire landscapes, the Stonehenge landscapes. And that is composed of 9 feet underground of 3D data. And through that, we discovered 17 new structures, new types of structures previously undiscovered. Through such an information, bringing the physical into the digital space, we were able to conduct simulation of how people in the past, as a group, young and old, walking from every single location through Neolithic monuments right towards the Stonehenge center. And through that, we have routes where it is more direct, but routes where you have excursions to see the other Neolithic monuments. Further to that, we conducted crowd behavior mining, where we compared modern human behavior with ancient behavior to see the differences. And this was featured mainly at the Royal Society Summer Science Exhibition. So I was building this simulation model where you can actually bury the dead, by choosing spaces within the entire landscapes. And that is a little simulation. So through that, we discovered there were choices, there were gender preferences for grave goods, also comparing age and goods types, and what people would choose, and what sort of burial mound they would choose to be buried, to bury their dead. And on the left side, we see the heat map showing concentration of crowdsourced burials when participants were not given the location of ancient burial sites. Comparatively, we saw change in distribution when participants repositioned their burial places after knowing where people have buried their dead. Now, through this, we saw that many positions chosen were remaining outside the visual envelope, and some positions, such as the ends of the earlier Greater Cursors monument, appear to have been attractive simply because the monument was present within all the screens in which decisions were made. Now, because they were seeing the entire map of this, and therefore the decisions were there. So the main point about this simulation is that in the XR space that we have, that we can simulate things, more information can be generated. Newly discovered information through digital scanning can make past information available for investigation, for exploration, for interpretation, for analysis. And so also with the Lost Frontiers project, we created simulation, plant tree growth, human behavior, and how AI agents would choose where to position their settlement within a particular landscape, with mathematical calculations and also visualization. And moving on to the next section, we have social augmented reality. Now, the concept of the metaverse includes the social nature of XR spaces. Unlike virtual reality in the past, only a single users were allowed to enter a simulation. But we are living in the age of social media, and there has to be work where groups of people are brought into a social space within the virtual environment to explore objects, particularly that are related to cultural heritage. So these are recent publications, and we evaluated 21 museums, and we saw that those who come together, the maximum number comes together are 2 persons. They visit museums as 2. The second were single persons, and the third was 3 persons, and they were all using digital devices in the museums. So if we are designing for museums, I thought, in this publication, we proposed that museums should design for 2, 3, or 4 persons, for all the digital exhibits. So, and we started this social AR, and also preferences for visits to museums, physical and XR. They were over 73%, over 83%, preferring to visit with another person or more. In terms of the frequency of visiting museum, you see that this is very encouraging. Most people visit museum at least once a year or more, and usually from 30 to 1 hour, or 1 hour to 3 hours the most. And these are the data which we have discovered. And we also observe how in a multi-user social augmented reality, how people communicate, what affects communication. I will not go into details, these are in the papers, and how they perceive objects, virtual objects, within an AR environment together, right? In terms of task immersion, how real the object is, if the object appears in the space, and if the object appears on screen. So these are the factors that affect how people react and interacted with the virtual objects. We also created ancient seaports, where you can be a port official or you can be a trader. And furthermore, we connected both VR and AR together, because there are preferences for some people for AR, some for VR, and they should be able to communicate in the concept of the metaverse. It's just an example. I should move on with results. And also, we have created apps where multiple users can use the same app, looking at the same object, but in different cities. And this is one simulation we have. Moving on to my next slide, we have started from several years ago using close-range photometric data to augment AI models, so that they can not only recognize them, but also generate new contents. And this is a close-range photometry. You can see the details. You can see broken glasses, but we simulated the same thing between, on the left, our close-range photometry, 16,600 images with the deep learning model, Neural Radiance Field, NVIDIA's Instant NGP, with only 160 images, but producing glass, mirror image, reflection, and so on perfectly. We also tested the point cloud to see if there are any differences between those who use more images and the lesser one. And there are quite very little difference, including point clouds generated from NERV with the details. Now, eventually in the metaverse, most models will not be 3D. They would be AI models, which generates a pixelated version for you to see in any angle. But then again, these sort of AI-produced models, they are averages. They are not really accurate. So the question is, can they be archived I would say not, until we have further developed deep learning models that are truly accurate as much as 3D scanning and close-range photogrammetry. And this is one version of a coffee roaster machine in Ningbo. Reflections, glass effects, everything. You cannot accomplish this in 3D scanning, but you can in NeRF. And moving on to AI-generated contents, not many people can tell which one is AI and which one is real. The center one is the original one. The rest are all artificial intelligence generated AI. What can we do with this? Probably not in the cultural heritage space, but definitely in the creative spaces in the future. So I shall quickly wrap up. I thought many ancient sites have been documented and preserved, but there remains information which have not been revealed. Reality technologies have opened up new avenues of research and access to ancient information that is sustainable. These are complex system science, time compression, decompression, AI computing, spatial computing. And invisible site can become visible if the total digital twin, the common denominator, is created that can allow a full integrative synthesis between the real and the virtual. Additionally, dimensions provided by reality technologies can add tremendous value and impact towards the research, interpretation, communication of cultural heritage. And AI is not only a tool, I thought it is an additional dimension which will enhance existing scientific and technical methods, providing solutions to present problems. So finally, as long as the common denominators are met, methods technologies in the XR space can make cultural heritage sustainable, and that extends beyond time and space. And finally, a new book to introduce to you with over 2 million years of history. And thank you very much.